We are live, Chris Denman, proud to have Billy Corben, director of the new film Screwball, back on the show. We love Billy in St. Louis. We love all the movies in the past, man, and we're so excited about this new one as we feel a little bit close to baseball and steroids, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me, Chris.
We've got highways named after a guy who refused to talk about the past here. So the new comedy documentary Screwball. I've seen you pushing it everywhere. Rolling Stone did a great write up. You've done all the big podcasts, man. It's so good to see you attacking something like this and in a very unique manner. We've got to get into everything that led you to making the choice to make the movie, how you did it, who all was involved. I guess the best place to start, Billy, for Screwball, what motivated this other than Florida never stops providing you with the best stories to tell?
Well, I mean, this was one of the most Miami stories of all of the Miami stories we've ever told, I think.
That's saying a lot.
To say that. Yeah. I mean, everybody knows about it, of course, because it netted A-Rod, and of course, myriad other high-profile players were involved as well. But obviously, he was the marquee name in the biogenesis scandal when it broke in 2013. But what I think people don't necessarily know is that Alex was really just collateral damage in this scandal, and what it comes down to is that the career of the highest paid baseball player in history effectively ended over a $4,000 debt between a cocaine-addicted fake doctor and his fake tan-addicted steroid patient. And I think that's what really attracted us to it. Once we understood what this was really all about and how irreverent and Floridiana and only in Miami that it was, I think we were that much more enthusiastic about taking it on.
And you all can get Screwball, again, it's on Prime Video right now. You can get it there. Billy, what's the best place for people to watch this, by the way?
Oh, yeah, any place online you go, iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Microsoft, Vudu, Redbox. It's a whole bunch of streaming services. You can get it on demand.
That's so great. And it's going to be quality because of all the work you've done in the past, and then this content so interesting. So back to starting in Florida over a $4,000 debt. So this literally got broke open because of ego and or someone just saying, hey, let's blow it all up. Who cares? Or did the people that made it public over that $4,000, could they have ever even envisioned that it would, I guess, snowball to the lengths that it did in regards to the media splash it made?
It wasn't intentional, meaning that when the whistleblower in the case, Porter Fisher, when he stole the documents, really, like I said, in this tiff over a $4,000 debt that was owed to him by the fake doctor and proprietor of Biogenesis, which was the steroid clinic. He was really doing it, as this kind of personal act of revenge and possibly even holding them in exchange for the money. It's kind of unclear precisely what his motives were, but what is clear is that he didn't necessarily comprehend the weight of what he had immediately. Like, he didn't sort of understand all of the names that were in there and what the damage this could do.
Right. And that, man, that's so crazy too, that you can have someone lightly involved like A-Rod and then the lengths that things can go. I mean, he was considered an all-time great. And I mean, still his career was a very nice career, but he's looked at much differently, as a player now. And then to have it just go that way, I couldn't think of a better person to document it than yourself and the team at Raconteur. So that's very interesting to me. So with this, you mentioned the whistleblower, Porter Fisher. He is played by a truly young man by the name of Frankie Diaz. Other names like Brian Blanco, Jonathan Blanco, Jake Alexander Martin, Ian Mackles, Blake McCall, all are names that you all don't know because they're child actors playing the roles of these wild, just crazy men in this really unique way that you told the story. You describe it as a drama, comedy, and then it invokes even some Coen brothers influence. Can you give me a little bit of insight into who came up with this thought process, and then who greenlights that? Because again, I know you work for yourself, but I'm sure somebody's got say financially or something. What makes you think a bunch of kids playing steroid users and sellers is going to be a hit for your world?
Yeah, it's less A-Rod and more Elmore Leonard or Carl Hiaasen. In much the same way you changed the name of that highway to Mark Twain from Mark McGuire.
Yep.
It's not about baseball. It's about literature, And so this story was so bizarre and so irreverent and so illogical. I mean, it's a farce. That's why we called it Screwball. It was just such a farcical tale, and all of the adults in the story acted like children. And we had a unique challenge here with this documentary, in that, like, when we do other stuff like sports docs, like The U for the ESPN 30 for 30 series, for example, you interview football players, they talk to you about football, you go get football games, and you put that footage on top of the interviews. It's a pretty straightforward process.
Right.
Here, this isn't about baseball. Yeah, it's sports adjacent, but people only mention, I think, 2 or 3 different games, ever come up even in the interviews. So what do you do to support your interviews, your talking heads? You need B-roll, you need footage to cut to make it aesthetically pleasing and entertaining and dramatic for the audience. So we knew we were going to have to do reenactments or recreations. And so we decided to just do it in a creative way, reenact these events that happened in hotels and nightclubs and bars and locker rooms and shady clinics with fake doctors, and we did it with actors who are lip-syncing, drunk history style, the interview subject's dialogue, and only the actors are, as you observed, 8, 9, and 10 years old. But I should point out that they're all realistically costumed, with tattoos and facial hair and wigs and lab coats and police uniforms and pinstripes and the works. Everybody very much looks the part, but is only, barely double digits in age.
That's it's so creative, and it's so Billy Corben of you to make that happen. I love it, and I love the style that you go.
I'm an adverb now. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's your highest achievement. That and Air of Miami, right?
Oh God, never, ever. Thank you, though.
You can't do that. No, and a big shout out as well. My co-host Travis Terrell's running around today, wasn't able to be part of the interview. We always love having you on, and he wishes you the best. And it's really, he just wanted to express thank you for coming on, and he loves the continued work as well. I can't forget to say that.
Well, I'm sorry I missed him today.
Yeah, it's a real shame. But hey, more for me. So okay, so when you're working on a project like this, so let's give some people some behind the scenes. And if it's just, your way around things because you've been doing it for, the better part of 20 years almost. If you're talking about doing a documentary or a dramedy, however we want to put it, right? Talking about real events with sensitive subjects, big time entities that can be, I'm sure, plenty litigious. How do you cover your ass in this situation? Making sure that you, A, provide something super entertaining, which you're always great at, and then B, keep things accurate enough, while still riding that line to keep people interested to where no one can come after you in a legal sense, because you have a very unique way of making your films.
Yeah, it's a good question, because we're obviously dealing with moneyed and litigious interests in this documentary, particularly in Major League Baseball and Alex Rodriguez, both of whom spent untold millions of dollars when this scandal broke trying to nail the other, and so in retelling that story, the best way to keep your hands clean and the best way to keep yourself out of trouble is to just tell the truth, is to ensure that you have the facts on your side. And I will tell you that in the nearly 20 years that my producing partners and I have been making documentaries, despite the fact that this is a comedy, that it is a farce, that it is totally absurd and unbelievable. It is the most meticulously researched documentary that we've ever done. We knew we had to be extra careful because of the absurdity of it. You know, you had to be able to assure the audience that all of this ridiculousness actually occurred. So we vetted this on an unprecedented level. We obtained documents that had never been released publicly, some of which were sworn testimony, that we were able to cross-reference the information from the previously published news reports that we used, as well as the interviews that we had obtained ourselves, and were able to confirm virtually everything that's in the documentary that we felt we required that level of vetting. And so we went line by line through it, and cross-referenced it with, like I said, previously published and unpublished reports, sworn testimony that verified the information, and which, in a oddly, it makes the whole thing even more unbelievable, because if you wrote this, if you were a novelist or a screenwriter, and you turned this manuscript in, you would be fired on page 15. Because it doesn't make any sense. You know, it doesn't make, the story doesn't make sense. The character motivations don't make sense. Like, the whole thing is just so illogical that they would fire you. They'd say, well, this is unrealistic and unbelievable. Your characters don't make sense. Your story's dumb. You're fired. But the thing is, this all happened, and that was it for us too. It's not that we didn't trust our interview subjects, that we needed to verify everything, but what they were telling us was so ridiculous. You know, so like we had to be sure. We had to be sure it was true, and so we went and we made sure of it.
Wow. So given all that vetting, given all that work, given your pedigree at this point, do you still have people take a swing or send that letter that says, hey, I don't appreciate this and we're coming after you, or just something? Do you still get any pushback, or do people more or less know better?
Well, you know, like I said, when the truth is on our side, I'm sure if they could nitpick at something, they would. But the truth is that we were, like I said, totally meticulous on
That's
this.
amazing.
So I think they should just, you know, they probably should just say, well, listen, it's all true. So what exactly?
Don't waste your time.
You're not going to push back against the truth. What you'd actually wind up doing is probably bringing more attention to it, you know, than they call it the Streisand effect is what they call it, you know, like
they do.
That's what they do. Like Devin Nunes cow. Nobody knew what the hell that was until he sued about it, you know? So like, then it went from like 500 followers to 500,000 followers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you're and listen, the head in the sand approach has worked pretty effectively for A-Rod, if you think about it. You know, like he never really did a mea culpa tour. He never really came out and acknowledged the extent of his wrongdoing, and it turned out just fine for him. So it almost, I feel like he's employing a relatively similar strategy, which is kind of ignore it. But then he started to I will tell you this, the day after our trailer came out, the day after the Screwball trailer hit the web, he proposed to J-Lo. And I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
simply stating facts.
The week we came out, the week Screwball came out theatrically, A-Rod did this like cover story in New York Times Magazine, where he addresses all sorts of things somewhat disingenuously. At the same time, our doc came out, so they seem to be kind of addressing it around us, you know, rather than taking it head on.
Right, and that's you know what, more power to them, right? If they can work around it, that's fine.
Listen, this strategy, this PR strategy, I think is one of the most successful and greatest in the history of image rehabilitations, and so I think that they will be studying what A-Rod did to come back, so to speak, in PR classes in universities. I mean, it's a remarkable
I agree.
Case study. So there's no reason they shouldn't stick to the same winning formula.
Yeah, and that's crazy too, because, and maybe I'm not close enough. I don't know what there's always like the local city perspective of, the local person, since he's from there. There's always that. Like, I hear different things about Nelly and Ozzie Smith than you do, right? There's
right.
There's that. But at the same time, the national perspective, even when he was doing his best, and I don't know that it was ever fair, and maybe behind the scenes it was different. That's such a good point to make, because A-Rod was never anybody's like, oh, he's a good dude. He did this, and maybe he did some charity stuff or something. But general perception was, kind of a D-bag. There's I don't know if it was the Red Sox stuff or what, but that was the perception. And now he gets these jobs that are usually kind of reserved for sweetie pies, right? Like, for guys that do that.
Yeah, he went from, American life, our politics, our sports, everything has become the WWE now. And
very good point.
He was great as the heel, and now we love him as the baby face. That's a great storyline of wrestling. It's like when you have the guy who was the villain, and now he's the hero, from the heel to the hero, and so we love that storyline. And when Bud Selig was the Vince McMahon of Major League Baseball, they needed him as the heel, because he needed to prove that he did something once and for all about steroids in baseball. So the storyline was he was going after the biggest scalp in the game, which was Alex Rodriguez, and then he retires, and Rob Manfred becomes the Vince McMahon of baseball, and he says, well, what's the new storyline to keep people watching this boring sport? And so they make the heel a babyface, and now everybody's, we're through the looking glass here. Whoever thought we'd live in a world where everybody loves A-Rod and hates Jeter? What the hell? When did that happen? What happened?
Right.
It's crazy. Right? It's crazy.
It really is, and it's something that who knows? Maybe there'll be something to uncover for you to do a Jeter Miami Marlins documentary. That'll be fun. That could get dirty real quick. I do have to ask, since I've got you on the line, what's your fractured municipality update in Miami? How are you? We're fighting over in St. Louis. We're fighting over city-county unification, which on paper would look good if they consolidated the 8 million municipalities here, but then you kind of start looking at it further, and it's like, I don't know, might slip into something else. Then you mix in MLS trying to work their way in and all these other crazy things happening. But I need to know the Miami update, man. How's it going down there?
Oh, it's a cluster. It's, it's the usual, par for the course. We have an MLS problem too with David Beckham, of course. The City of Miami Commission and now the Fort Lauderdale Commission. This is 2 counties now are going to bend over for Beckham and give him literally like whatever he wants. It's insane, and it's a terrible deal, of course, for the taxpayers. But you have the mayor of Miami, who is literally in the pocket of Jorge Mas, who is David Beckham's partner, who Beckham finally very smartly brought into the deal after several false starts with different locations for his publicly subsidized soccer stadium, which nobody really needs or wants. And so we have that. We also have a battle going on between the state and the county over the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, because we have this literal highway bandit organization. It's like it's a government-sanctioned racketeering organization that tolls us to death. Like, it literally just sets up these tolls. It's classic taxation without representation. They just toll the death out of working-class people on one of the very few east-west expressways in the entire county. So they basically are holding you hostage. They hit you with those SunPass tolls, just like you just drive, you don't even have to stop, you just drive through and they're literally picking your pocket. And the state wants to take it over, and the county, of course, everybody wants to steal that money is what it is. What's happening. So they all want this, they hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue every year. And so everybody is now, they're fighting over this pot of gold, and we're just stuck in the middle. And, because nobody actually wants to reduce the tolls. Everybody's just like, who gets to control the toll money? So we're like, yeah, screw the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. But then you look at the new plan that the state has, and it's really not that much better. So you basically got all these corrupt politicians fighting over money that they're stealing from us. And it's just amazing. It's just great.
It's madness. We're seeing it here, and I laugh about it because, we'll just jump in. We don't even have to go deep, but just one issue here is everybody's, silver bullet is marijuana, which would help with, opioid issues, all these things, and hopefully bring in tax revenue. But then I can't help but think, okay, yes, I completely agree. I don't even smoke, and I'm saying get the stuff here, just stop. It's silly that we're putting people in prison and all this stuff for a plant. And then I do think about it, and I think, yeah, but are they going to fix potholes in hospitals with that money coming in, or is it just going to, be siphoned off just like everything else?
Right.
And I hate that. I hate that I have that attitude.
Yeah, it's a shame. Well, listen, Colorado is a really good example of, I think, a very successful experiment in democracy with respect to marijuana legalization. And they literally have so much money generated in taxes from marijuana. They have happy, well-paid teachers and happy, well-paid police officers, and they have so much money left over, they're starting to be forced to do tax refunds that they had promised, which they never thought they
wow.
And they're like, well, wait, do we have to give it back? It's like, yeah, you promised that you'd give it back. So it's like they have more revenue than they know what to deal with. And the bottom line is that even if you want to set aside the revenue-generating motive of legalizing pot, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, which is there's a legitimate civil rights motive for it.
Oh, and that's going to get nasty. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you lock up people for over a plant that grows out of the earth that is less dangerous than poison ivy? And I'm not a smoker, but I know people who smoke both recreationally and for medicinal purposes, and I don't think any of them belong in prison for crying out loud, should be deprived life, liberty, or property over this. I mean, especially when you have states like Colorado with really successul models for legalization, of course. And just think if you just stopped arresting people for it, just think of the money we would save. We'd not only be a freer country and put fewer otherwise law-abiding citizens in prison and destroying families over marijuana, because those are the only lives that have been destroyed over marijuana, by the way, are the result of the prohibition, not as the result of actually ingesting the product. But the truth is that not only would we be freer, we'd save untold amounts of money on prisons, on courts, on public defenders, on prosecutors, on police. We could just actually focus on real crime. Here's the thing that police and prosecutors and people don't want you to know. Fighting crime, real crime, is hard. It's really hard work to solve a murder
difficult.
Or a rape, or even a burglary or a robbery. It's really hard. You know what's easy? A couple of guys getting a hand job at a day spa. That's easy to bust. You know what I mean? You know what's easy to bust? A couple of kids smoking a joint. That's real low hanging fruit, and they need to feed this beast that we've built of the prison industrial complex. I mean, we start yelling about land of the free and the home of the brave. We lock up more people in America than any other country in the world, both in pure numbers and per capita. We are a prison state, and nobody really wants to acknowledge that because there's so many billions of dollars around the law enforcement and justice system economy. But it's terrible. It makes America less freer. It poisons the relationship that communities have with their police, with their government. The war on drugs has been a miserable failure. Every other country, including the entirety of the United Nations, have acknowledged that, for crying out loud, and yet we keep perpetuating it to great detriment to our children and to our country and to our society.
It's eloquently said, and it's definitely something that it should eat at us more. And I think, I don't know, I like to think that gradually some of these things are going to get cleaned up. But just like everything, when I go back, and I'm a fan of documentaries, obviously, you go back, and even if you just watch CNN's Decades thing, I'm watching the 90s on Netflix with CNN, and I think, oh no, we're still fighting about some of the stuff they were fighting about in the mid to early 90s.
Oh, and listen, and talk about, the parties, or if one party's for it or against it. Bill Clinton did more to imprison more poor, more black people over the war on drugs than any other president before. So the idea that this science fiction of the war on drugs was started by Nixon, but then perpetuated on regardless of the party or the president, is really true. So what we can only hope is that it's generational. Like you said, hopefully this generational ignorance and this perpetuation of this horrific science fiction of a war on drugs will grow out of it, hopefully. Meaning the horrible people who have something vested in it will die, is basically what I mean generationally.
That's very to the point.
Yeah, and reasonable people, rational people, objective people who don't have a stake in private prisons or in locking up poor people or black people for no reason will go, wait, what are we doing? Why don't we take stock here and realize that this is not a left or right thing or a Republican or Democrat thing. This is an American thing. We talk about being the freest country in the world, and yet we lock up more people over nothing, over nonviolent offenses, victimless crimes. What the hell are we doing? Instead of just perpetuating it, I don't know, out of tradition. Well, we've always done it this way. Why don't we just keep, we did that out of tradition too? Slavery. We did that out of tradition because, well, this is always the way that we've done it. And eventually you grow up, hopefully, as a country, and you say, what are we doing? Okay, it's time to put a stop to this ignorance and this stupidity.
Very well said. Billy, you're a generational talent.
How the hell did we do that? How did we get here? It got dark. It got dark, dude.
But you know what's not dark?
I need a joint,
Screwball.
Chris. Now I'm even smoking. I need a joint now. I'll have whiskey instead.
Okay, you can do that. And if you're ever in St. Louis, you got to come by our studios and offices, and we'll have to do it live, man. I can't thank you enough for all the great work you've done, and please come back soon, man. Yeah. I love the work.
In the words of Bill O'Reilly, we'll do it live. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. That's right. Billy Corben, raconteur.com/screwball. You can see all about it. We'll tweet out all the information. Billy, wonderful speaking to you. Keep up the great work, man. Can't wait for the next project.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
We are live, live, live. We are live, live, live. We are live, live.